All right, so it's finally come. We're going to be doing object pooling now. So first thing I want to do is create a game object that's going to actually contain all of the pooled objects. So in the hierarchy here, go ahead and right click, create empty, and then we're going to call this object pool. We're also going to create a new script. This time just make sure the script is actually attached to this rather than right clicking down here to create it. Just go to object component, or object pool, add component, and then we're going to go down to new script, and it wants you to name the new script, and we're just going to call it object pool. So what I'm going to be working on right now, or the main framework for the object pool actually comes from raywenderlich.com, an article by Mark Plazchek, I think, called Object Pooling in Unity. And in his article, Mark goes through a lot of really good explanations about why you'd want to use object pooling and what object pooling does and how it helps the CPU handle things and how it keeps your game from running more slowly than it should. So I'm not going to go through all of that stuff piece by piece. Instead, I'm just going to cover the object pooling that pertains to our project right here. So you'll notice that that script that we just created isn't in the scripts folder. It's in the assets folder, and I'm just going to grab it and pull it into scripts just to keep everything nice and organized. And let's go ahead and open this up in MonoDevelop. So a few things we're going to need for the object pool. We're going to need to make sure that we have this using our system.collections.generic tag up here. We're also going to be creating a custom class for these. So our custom class is going to be the stuff that we want to know about the item that we're pooling. We want to know how many of them we want to have on hand. We want to know what the object is, and that's pretty much all we're going to look at right now. In his tutorial, Mark adds also whether or not it should expand, but we'll kind of cover our bases as far as that expanding goes. So we're going to create a new class. We're going to call it public class, and this is object pool item, which is the object that we're pooling. And in this class, we're going to, actually, I don't need to have those in close parentheses. That's why I got that red there. We're going to have essentially just two things, which is the public integer of how many of them we want to pool, amount to pool, and then we also want public game object of the actual object that we're pooling. Okay, so we've created a custom class now that can be accessed in other places. Up until now, we've just been using the classes that we've been creating. So now in the actual object pool class, we're going to create a couple lists. So we're going to say public list of game objects, and then this is going to be the objects after we create them. And we're also going to create a public list of object pool item, which is why we created this custom class, because now we can create a list of those. And we're going to call this items to pool. Go ahead and save this. Now, in the start method, I'm going to finish the reference to the pooled objects, and then I'm also going to populate the object pool item with however many objects we need in it. So in here, in the start method, I'm going to say pooled objects is equal to a new list of game objects. Okay, cool. It's all right with that. And now we're going to use something called a for each loop. So we used a for loop a while ago. A for each loop does something similar, only it only does certain commands if the game object or if the item meets certain criteria. So we're going to do for each, and we want to look at object pool item in items to pool. Oh, did I call it to poo? That's funny. Items to pool. That's better. Okay, so we're going to be looking for each object pool item, and we need to give it a name. So object pool item, we'll call it item. If I could type correctly today, that'd be awesome. And then open and close the curly braces. So what we're doing is we're looking for each of these object pool items. We're going to call each one of them item just as we go, just so we have a reference in the items to pool. What we're going to do is we're going to have a for loop nested inside of this. And what this is going to do, for int I is equal to 0, I is less than item dot amount to pool, and then we're going to increase it each time. Again, that Mark, what was his name? Mark Plaschek, or yeah, I don't know. Apologies if I'm saying it wrong. Does an excellent job of describing what each of these steps are and why we need them. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new game object. We'll call it object. And this is going to be equal to, we have to do something called casting here. So we're going to instantiate something, and then we're going to cast it as a game object. So let me actually show you what happens if we don't do this casting. So we're going to instantiate, and it's already to instantiate here because once we instantiate these objects, we're going to either turn them on or off for the rest of the game. Instantiate item dot object to pool, but see it doesn't clear up that red line under here. And actually, let's just call this obj. That might clear up the red line. It does, but I want to make sure if I go in here, go into Unity, just going to think for a second, and if I hit play, I should get an error. Yep, no reference exception, object not sent to. But in here, actually, yeah, just to solve ourselves, it wasn't giving us an error for this, but let's just kind of defend ourselves against it. We want to cast this as a game object to make sure it's going to act as a game object in the pool. Okay, then we're going to do take the object and we're going to set it inactive, and then we're going to also add it to the pooled objects. So pooled objects dot add obj. Okay, so now let's go back into Unity. I'm going to go to my object pool, and it has place for pool objects. I'm going to have 2 in there right now. Element 1, or element 0, is going to be a square brick. Actually, it is only giving me the list of pooled objects and not of the object pool item. Oh, that's why. Give me just 1 second, I'll be right back. Okay, so what we need to do in order to make this work is we need to make it a serializable class. So we're going to add at the top here in square brackets, system.serializable. And then if we save this, we pop back into Unity, it should be able to actually see that list. System.serializable essentially just takes that, yeah, and see now we have items to pool. And I'm going to make 2 of these. And now we have all these things part of element 0. So it needs to know how many of them we want to pool and what the object itself is. So in our prefabs, I'm going to create 1 for the square brick and 1 for the triangle brick. And at any time, so I have 6 across, and then I could be at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll say 8 spaces, because once it gets down here, we'll say that's the bottom. So it could be at one of 8 spaces. Actually, yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. So it could be at one of 8 spaces. So 6 times 8 is 48. So I should only ever need to have 48 objects, period. And that's if like this is entirely filled up. Bear in mind that I should probably have a distribution of half and half, but just in case, I'm going to say that I want 40 of each of these. So 40 and 40. So now, didn't mean to do that. So now if I hit play, it's going to think for a second. And now over here in my hierarchy, you can see I have 40 of these bricks ready to go. So now I don't need to create or destroy anymore. I just need to turn them on and off. So right now, we hit the brick, we hit the ground, these move down. After these move down, we want to create another level of bricks. So in order to do that, we're going to go into our game manager script, and we're going to create a new method. And this method is going to be what we use to create the new objects. Actually, before we do this, we need to finish up the object pool. So we need to be able to pull objects from the pool. So we're going to create a method inside the object pool script. So we're in the object pool script right now. And this is going to be a method that allows us to bring back a game object from the pool. So rather than doing a void, like we've been doing, voids are methods that just do something. We're going to do this as a game object. So it's always going to need to return something back. So we'll do public game object, and we'll call it get pooled object. And then we want to know what object we're getting back. So we're going to use the object's tag. So string tag. Okay. So now if we just leave this as it is, we don't have anything that's being returned. So that's kind of a problem. So up here, what we want to do is we want to go through all of the pooled objects. We want to find the first one that's active, that has the correct tag, and then send that back to whatever was asking for it. So we're going to go through all the pooled objects. So we're going to do for int I equals 0, I is less than pooled objects dot count, and I plus plus. So this is setting up a loop that goes through all of the pooled objects. We're going to start at 0. We're going to keep going until we've checked all the objects that are there, and we're going to add 1 every time. Now what we want to do is we want to check to see if the object is active in the hierarchy and if it has the correct tag. But we don't want it to be active, we want it to be inactive. So we're going to say if, and we're going to do pooled object, and then we want to reference the one that we're on, so I dot active in hierarchy is false, and pooled objects I dot tag is equal to tag, the string that we just sent in. So what we're doing is we're checking all of our objects that are in the pooled objects, so all 80 of those. We're going to find one that's inactive and has the right tag, and then we're going to return that object. We're going to send it back to whatever was asking for it. Now if we're not doing this, so outside of the for loop, we're going to return nothing. And the word for nothing in computer science is null. Okay, so that's our method in the object pool to send back an object to whatever was asking for it. We're going to need to make sure that everything is tagged properly too. So now if we go into the game manager, we're going to create a new method that we're going to call public void, I don't know, like reset level or place objects, or we'll call it place bricks. Okay, so in here, when we place the bricks, we're going to go through each of the spawn points, kind of like what we did up here, only instead of instantiating it, we're going to grab it from the pool, which means we need to have a reference to the pool up here in our global variables. So we're going to do, let's make it private, because we're only ever going to have one object pool at a time. So private object, I keep wanting to call it object poo. It's funny. Okay, and then down here, we're going to finish the reference object pool equal to find object of type, and it's fine to do this because there's only ever going to be one in the scene. Object pool. Okay, cool. So then in here, what we're going to do is use code really, really similar to what we were doing to create the bricks in the first place. So I'm going to copy and paste this down here. So I'm going to go from 0 to spawn points.length, brick to create 0 to 3. And instead of these two lines here, I'm going to delete them. So instead of doing that, I'm instead taking an object from the pool and setting it active. So to do that, I'm going to do, we'll say, I cannot type today, game object brick is equal to object pool. I cannot type. Dot get pooled object, and we want to get the square brick. And we need to make sure that the square brick has this exact tag. And then we're going to add this to the bricks. So bricks.add, add brick. And then if we get something back, so if brick is not null, so meaning if it exists, then what we want to do is change its position to the right position. So let's change this from a for loop to a for each loop. And then in here, we're going to change this to transform position in spawn point. So we're looking for each transform in spawn points, and we're going to call it position. So down here, we're going to say brick.transform.position. It's going to be equal to the current position we're on, dot position. And brick.transform.rotation is equal to quaternion.identity. And then the last thing we want to do is set it active. Brick.setActive, true. So this is if it's a square brick. I'm going to just copy this code and repeat it with a triangle brick. So instead of being square, triangle. Now, once everything's moved down, so our brick movement controller is what was moving stuff down. So has moved is true. So once it goes, once it moves, then I also want it to, okay, so here's how we're going to do this. So in the game manager script, we created the prepare or place bricks. One thing that I want to make sure that I add to that, so in the game manager script, in the place bricks method, I'm going to add something that just increases the level. So level plus plus. Cool. Now let's go back over. That just means that it's going to, if it was level 1, it's 2, 2, it's 3, 3, it's 4. If I go back to the ball controller here, where I had all the bricks move, I'm going to add a little bit of code just to have the game manager create a new level. So game manager dot, what did I call it? Place bricks. Yep. So game manager dot place bricks. All right. So now I need to make sure in Unity, actually before I do that, and then I'm also going to change my current state to aim. Okay, so back in Unity now, I'm going to make sure that my prefabs have the correct tag so that they're going to be created correctly. So these are both untagged. I'm going to add a tag, and I need to make sure to spell it the same way I did in the game manager script. So square brick, and add another one for triangle brick. And these aren't tagged yet, I just created those tags. So I'm going to tag them as square and as triangle. Okay, cool. Now if I hit play here, let's see what happens. All right, so created, random colors, boom, more, and it's level 2, so they're 2 health each. And when I break one. Let's break one of these two over here. Goes back to the pool. And then each time, there's something wrong with our number of objects in the pool, but we'll fix that in a minute. Or actually, next time. We'll fix it next time. So there you go. And that's object pooling.